Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 550 of the DrunkNerds Podcast. I'm host, as always, I'm Tyler, and joining me, we have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Sir Gables. What is up, buddy?
Oh man, let me tell you something, Tyler. I'm feeling pretty freaking amazing right now. Not only did my work week go pretty good, but I also picked up a freaking new Nintendo Switch. I got the Tears of the Kingdom OLED. The design of it looks pretty freaking fantastic. I'm loving the OLED screen. I've been playing a lot of Advance Wars and stuff, and every ounce of it looks like it's popping. The main reason why I got it is because I've had my launch model Switch literally since like early 2018, and I thought that it'd be really appropriate since it's getting tailored in close to the end of the Nintendo Switch's lifespan, where, you know what, I'm going to get myself a new Switch because I want to keep on playing games on my Nintendo Switch. But other than that, though, yeah, man, it's been pretty fun and stuff. Did have like a little incident though at my workplace and stuff where just had like this random like junkie trying to come into the back of our place. But at the same time, though, I mean, other than that, though, man, it's it's going all right. But how have you been doing, Tyler?
Doing all right, clanging and banging as always. It is officially in Central Time, 12:43 a.m.
Okay.
I am officially 34 years old. I am now
Yay.
officially in my mid-30s, Gables.
Yep.
So still upset that you called me that like 2 months ago. I have not gotten
I
over
didn't
it.
call you that, man. I thought it's like we're in our mid-30s.
Yeah, I know, but it's still the meanest thing anybody's ever said to me. I have not gotten over
your
it.
60s.
Well, we're not there yet, Gables. Hopefully I'll probably be dead 25 years before I get to there. So,
Oh boy.
but no, I'm doing all right. Otherwise, I've had a few of these beers now. Drank a little bit of coffee a couple hours ago. It's pretty cool. Gables and I went in almost like a 90-minute deep dive into TV show spinoffs, like before the podcast.
Just randomly.
Just random. Don't even know how you get there. You know how it is. You start talking to your friend about shit, and next thing you know, it's like 3 hours go by, and you're like, what the fuck were we? What did we even talk about to get here? I don't even know. And then somehow we discovered there's a Good Burgers 2 coming out this year. So,
Yeah, we literally did. It was
Yep.
It was crazy. It was like a mind-altering moment where it's like, there's a Good Burger 2 being filmed this year.
yeah, it's being filmed starting next week, Gables.
Sheesh.
So I am pretty excited. There's no better birthday present than Good Burgers 2. Learning that some, outside of maybe like Basketball 2 being made. I don't know if we can top that.
Oh my god, that's one of my favorite cult classic films.
Yeah.
Basketball.
I listened to a podcast the other day, and someone made a quote from that movie, and I lost my shit because I'm like, I didn't know anybody else knew this movie but me, or at the very least remembered anything, especially this like first we get the jobs, then we get the khakis, then we get the chicks. And I was like, oh my god, it's basically, yeah, I was like, it blew my mind. I'm like, somebody else not only knows that movie, watched that movie, remembers that quote from that 25-year-old movie.
Oh my god, all I can remember from that movie is like that scene and stuff like that where he's trying to like just psych out his opponent or stuff like that. And he just literally just shows the guy's uniform. It's like, hey, that's my wife. It's like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
me.
yeah, that's me. It's fucking great. I just remember the part where they face the Australian guys, or no, I can't remember what it is, but like they like face the one dudes, and like they get called for like a foul. He's like, oh, because you can't make gay jokes. He's like, oh, it's not a gay joke, it's like an Australian joke. I love that. Oh man, the show's so good. That movie's so good. He's like, you're excited? Feel these nipples. What a movie is just endless comedy. Did I just fart? Oh my god, that movie's so good. They really should make another one. I hope they do. Instead of a third South Park game, give me a basketball video game instead. I would play the fuck out of that. EA, what are you guys doing? No one plays FIFA anymore. That game's dead. Now no one wants to play FC Sports or whatever the fuck it's called. They want to play basketball to 2024. Let's get it going. Come on, chop chop. Anyways, this is the DrunkNerds Podcast. Where every week Gables and I get together to talk about video games. Yeah, this is the 550th edition of it. Gables,
Dang.
we are in the month of our 10-year anniversary.
Yes, we are.
Memorial Day weekend, buddy, will be our 10-year anniversary of doing this podcast.
That's crazy. Yeah, we didn't go into this thinking we would be recording this long. I mean, it just happened.
Gables, if I knew at 23, 24, whatever, like, well, I guess I would have been like 23 when we came up with the name of this, because we came up with the name well before we came up with the podcast. I would not have called it DrunkNerds Podcast.
No, I wouldn't have either.
I would have thought of something much better. But when you're in your early 20s, hey, that's all we were doing was drinking. So, it sounded like a great name in early 2013. So, or I think it was 2012 actually. We came up with the name. So then it took us we fucked around for like 9 months before we finally started just doing a podcast. Jake originally wanted Jake and I, who originally was talking to you about doing this podcast, he wanted to do like kind of like what Game Grumps does, kind of an idea where we just play through games, co-op games together, and break them up into like 30-minute episodes. Luckily, I talked him out of that and was like, "Well, if we just do a podcast," and luckily for me, that's what we just did. I don't know. Actually, maybe it would be better we just started on YouTube 10 years ago instead of it starting on YouTube in 2021. I don't know. Who knows? But anyways, we're here now. It's 10 years later. We're episode 550. Gables.
Yeah.
It's been a wild week for video games.
No shit.
For one real reason and one reason only. First off, Gables, we are less than a week away from Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes, we are. And it feels marvelous.
Man, you're excited. You should feel these nipples, Gables. Yeah. But, it is pre-installed on the Switch right now. I clicked on the button to try to start the game just to see what happened. It didn't work. I had to know. I had to find out. You gotta give it a shot. I had nothing to lose. So I was just thinking of that girl that when they delayed Advance Wars last year. She already had it pre-installed on her Switch when they delayed it, and she was able to play through the entire game over a year ago. So I'm like, what if I'm that guy that got to play Tears of the Kingdom that wasn't the people that already playing Tears of the Kingdom? Nintendo fucked up and I got the game that way. Yeah, it did not work though. But it was worth a shot. I'm gonna try every day though, at least twice a day until the game comes out. I'm gonna wake up Friday morning, it's finally gonna work. I'm like, oh shit, it worked. But yeah, anyways. But anyway, we get together every week, talk about video games. If you like this, please follow, subscribe. We are live on YouTube right now. But the podcast goes up later everywhere else, Apple, Spotify. We're also on Twitter, Facebook. We are pretty much wherever podcasts are at. The main ones we're at. If there's a place you'd like us to be at, leave us a comment. We'd really appreciate it. Also, leave us 5-star reviews, thumbs ups, comments, shares. Shares being the big one. Tell your friends. There's links down below in the description with links to all of our socials and Extra Life, cool little charity we do every year in November, where we play video games, raise money for kids at the Children's Medical Network hospitals. So please check that out too, and maybe donate to people, tell some friends, sign up for yourself. That'd be great. But Gables, like I said, there's been one real major thing going on in the world of gaming this week.
Yep.
And that's Redfall. So I got very concerned, Gables, when I started reading some stuff last weekend. Because usually I can sleuth around the internet and find some shit about reviews before the reviews go live. To kind of, not all the time, but usually you can see some stuff that will give you an idea of where things are going. Also, by the way, reviews for Tears of the Kingdom look like they're going up Thursday morning. So just a heads up on that. It's either Wednesday or Thursday, but it looks like it's Thursday. So that's kind of what I found so far. But anyway, people have been playing the game for 3 weeks now also. But Redfall, I was going around looking up some stuff, and I was like, all right, looked like people were talking about reviews aren't going. The game comes out on Tuesday, and I was finding the reviews aren't going up until Tuesday. I'm like, okay, well that's weird. That's not a good sign. Usually, I kind of the rule of thumb for gaming reviews is the earlier they come out, the more confident they are in that game.
Yes.
Like you see a lot of times, like PlayStation will usually like tell people reviewing the game 3 weeks before the game comes out that they've been playing the game, and then usually the review is like a week plus out. And there are people do that too, but I know PlayStation's kind of the main one for that. Um, but like Nintendo's usually like 48 hours before the reviews drop. I don't know. I wish they'd do it earlier. Like most of the games are great anyways. Uh, but anyways, so I started. Okay, so reviews are going to come out till Tuesday. All right, that's fine. Not feeling great about that, but that doesn't necessarily mean the worst thing, but doesn't mean anything good either. Um, I woke up Tuesday morning, no reviews out. I'm like,
No.
okay, that's weird. And then I started going online, and then I'm like, oh, the reviews don't come out until 7 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Pacific Time. Like that's fucking what?
Yeah,
And then
was really weird.
yeah, and then Xbox announced that you could play the game at that exact same time. I'm like, oh no! And then some reviews started leaking. We started seeing some 4s out of 10s, a couple of 6s and 7s out there. Um, so, anyways, the game I believe is a 61 on OpenCritic right now, which
Yes.
Gables not great when that was like my 7th game I picked in our Fantasy Critic League. So I took
Mm-hmm.
a gigantic L on that one. Is actually
And
open at 74, and I'm like, God, that fucking sucks. And now it's plummeted
ooh,
down to a 62 or 61 right now. Last I checked, it was a 62. But anyways, um, on the Kind of Funny Xcast, which is the Kind of Funny Xbox podcast,
yes.
they announced on Tuesday that Phil Spencer was going to be on the podcast, head of Xbox, was going to be on the podcast that on Wednesday afternoon, and the podcast go up Thursday morning. Some stuff that we did learn later on was they actually booked that um, interview a few weeks earlier, and they were like planning some stuff to talk about. They're going to talk about the summer game fest, like they have the Xbox showcase on June 11th, I believe is what it
Yeah.
is, and they're going to talk about that, and then the build up to that, you have the CMA block, the Activision deal.
Yep.
It's like okay, we'll talk about that, and then obviously the Redfall stuff drops the day before. So Phil Spencer ends up obviously he ends up doing the interview anyways. Um, but it's a lot of interesting stuff coming out. It was like a 40-minute interview. I highly recommend the interview. Gables and I have both watched it. I actually went and watched it a few times. I just thought it was a really fascinating interview. Because thought it was. I mean, you're always gonna have some like marketing PR speak in there. But I've always liked Uncle Phil, because I feel like he's of like the big three. He's like the only one that actually like plays video games. We
Mm-hmm.
know Jim Ryan doesn't. I can't remember the CEO of Nintendo. I can't remember his name, but
Furukawa.
Hirokawa, thank you. But as far as we know, he doesn't play games. But like Phil's also the only one that actually does like interviews. Um, like he tweets about like games he's been playing. He
Right.
talks like he actually goes on like Xbox podcasts and he talks to people and tweets about actually has interactions on like Twitter and stuff like that with gamers and stuff like that. And I always appreciate that. And I like that. Um, but yeah, like it was pretty shocking that like he's coming out and doing this. But Gary Whitta, who was also on that podcast, mentioned that it's something I completely forgot about, that he was doing that Animal Talking, the Animal Crossing talk show when COVID first hit, and he would have like celebrities come on, but they would like be their Animal Crossing characters would come
Yeah.
on this talk show. And I remember the day before Phil Spencer was supposed to be on that show, they announced they were delaying Halo a whole year and it wasn't going to make the launch of the Xbox Series consoles. And
Dang.
he's still like, Gary was like, I was fully expecting you to draw, like, get the news that you weren't going to be on the show. He came on the show, took it on the chin, and here he is. This Redfall reviews drop, takes it on the
Right.
chin. He's here for it. So it's a very fascinating interview. I really recommend. Like, we're gonna go through a lot of it. The whole podcast basically is gonna be a lot about this interview. But I've kind of broken it out into different topics here. But the first one here is mostly about Redfall and its reception and kind of what went wrong. Um, and I like this because it was like I said, there's a lot of PR stuff in there and marketing things you're gonna talk about. But um, you know, for the first time ever, usually we always get like the happy, like smile on his face, upbeat Phil, and he referred to himself multiple times as the grumpy Phil, and he definitely kind of leaned. He definitely was that throughout the podcast interview here. So kind of start off here. Addressing Redfall's disappointing reception in a new interview with Kind of Funny Games, Microsoft's head of gaming claimed the platform holder did not expect such negative reception to the game, citing internal mock reviews which allegedly suggested it could have received much higher scores. He also suggested that delaying the game further, it was originally due out in 2022, would not have solved the biggest issues. So this is the direct quotes from him here. We do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and this is double digits lower than where we thought we would be with this game. That's one of the disappointing things. We would never strive to launch a game that we thought would review in the low 60s. It's not part of our goals. If you look at our review scores over the past year, and this is not a defense at all, I think the teams have done a much better job at upping the level of quality of the games, and we've shipped. And this game was significantly below our internal metrics compared to where it actually reviewed. But that's not on anybody but us. We have to own that. Um, so kind of interesting there, Gables. We talk about being below double digits below what he thought. So say double digits. They were probably expecting mid 70s to low 80s on that is probably what I would anticipate when
Right.
um, and we've definitely seen some of those in there, but they're obviously very few and far between. But so I played about 3 hours of this game, Gables.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they thought they were going to get those sevens and eights. Um, the only thing I thought, so I did some. A lot of people were like, so kind of the mock review thing kind of became a big or thing on, not a big thing on Twitter, but I seen people tweeting about it and retweets about it, like people that did mock reviews in the past, and kind of how the whole process works. Where like, so it's not like some people were talking about, oh, they hire and people instead they just have people inside Xbox review their own games, and it's like, no, they hire independent companies that come in, and then they bring in usually like former reviewers or people like other people from like other like that work at websites or formerly worked at websites, and it's like a side job they do. They come in and review the game, and but like they get early builds of the game, and they kind of tell them, hey, here's the issues. Like, the game's not done. Like, there's literally like you might have a character that's not even like that's supposed to be there. That's not supposed to be there yet. And you might just have a text of what this character's supposed to do. And like, hey, so like, and they just kind of get a rough idea of what they know is the issue, and then they go from there.
Right.
Um, and so like, a couple people were talking about like people that have done mock reviews in the past say it's always tough to do these because it's like this is what you're told. Like they know the issue will be fixed when the game comes out, but you don't know for sure if that's going to be the case or not. And we've definitely seen in the past where even like people like at websites or podcast content creators review games. Like the infamous thing recently with Cyberpunk, where remember that game came out and the reviews were shockingly lower than what we thought. Like we were thinking that was like the game of the generation, and it came out and like the reviews were like, I think it was like, and it was in like the low 80s when it came out, and people were pissed off at reviewers for giving it low scores because they had a lot of technical issues, but they were also told that like they they had all these issues, but like they were told a lot of them would be fixed on day one, so they kind of glossed over a lot of those issues because they trusted the developers and publishers that those issues would be fixed. And then when the game came out, the game was obviously we know what Cyberpunk was, and then everybody was mad at the reviewers for giving it too high of a score. And we saw it just recently with Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Like every review, every person I heard that played the game for review talked about like there's all these bugs and all these issues. And that besides the PC part, but like the PS5 and the console versions of the game, for the most part, run really, really well. Like there's some minor glitches and bugs here and there, but like for the most part, the game is fine. So they talked about like there was a lot of people's like, we've been burned in the past where we were told like, oh, this will be fixed, don't worry about it. But like a lot of them brought up the issues they had, but also tried to review around the fact that those bugs were there. So I do think it's interesting where it's like it's smart to do these internal reviews, but it's also like I think like maybe it's a case of like you can't be like holy text here, you know what I mean? So kind of when you heard all that, Gibbles, what was your thoughts on it?
Okay, when it came to the internal reviews type of thing, the initial thing, I did not know that they were going through and hiring out companies, like independent companies, to go forth and try to do a specific play test and also just give like a mock like review things of that to the Microsoft company themselves. I mean, that's relatively new information from my standpoint, but from what I'm from what I'm really thinking, it's like obviously from them doing the mock reviews and stuff, they must have been thinking of like a very low standard or something like that because there had to have been some form of miscommunications between like with Phil Spencer's group and stuff with the development team in general, like the Arcane Studios, I should say, and then
Hmm.
between these initial playtesters because there is nothing really concrete that would suggest at its current form Redfall is anywhere close to being like a 70s or an 80s style of game. It sounds like there were a bunch of fluff tactics that went into a play, but I can't really specify or name anything since I wasn't a part of any of those type of
Yeah.
independent like mock reviews. But my ultimate thought about it is like there had to have been plenty of miscommunications here between one hand and the other because quite honestly it's like this type of thing going unnoticed and then like there were supposed to be like cited as like one type of score but the opposite but it's the complete opposite to where it's like it just sounds like that possibly the independent team was kind of a little bit more hesitant or something like that to view their
Yeah.
actual thoughts and feelings of the game. That's what I'm thinking
Or
currently.
maybe they were told that like, hey, this, and this will be fixed. Don't worry about that. Just tell us the merit, like and like a lot of the
Yeah,
things that they
that's
were
the
told
thing.
would be fixed weren't actually fixed when the game came out.
And that's the thing. If they were told from the offset, okay, these things were going to be fixed and stuff from like maybe day one or something, or maybe they were given a different kind of like version and stuff that didn't have a lot of those technical issues present that they went through did a mock review for. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that could have went wrong for these internal review stuff. But yeah, that's but honestly, I'm really kind of surprised that it went through that type of rigmarole and still ended up kind of like the total version of what it is currently.
Yeah. But some more stuff here. So Spencer was asked generally about how he decides whether a game should be delayed, and the exec said Xbox wouldn't push a project back if it didn't believe it could realize its creative vision as a result. So some of the quotes here is there are quality issues, and we're working on those, but a fundamental piece of the feedback I get is that the game isn't realizing the creative vision that it had for its players. That it doesn't feel like a hey, it's just a delay. Hey, just delay it. That feels like the game had a goal to do one thing, and when the players are actually playing, they're not feeling that. Um, when a game needs to be delayed, like what we did with Starfield, Halo, and Redfall, because of the production, because the production timeline is saying we have this vision and our production timeline doesn't get us to the completion of that vision, we delay games. But when I look at the review scores of this game and it's and okay, there's some typo here. Um, Review scores of this game, it did enough. Wait, I'm sorry. So I copied and pasted. I should have proofread. But when I look at the review scores of this game, it did we have enough creative differentiation? Oh, Jesus Christ, it is 1 o'clock in the morning here. I'm sorry. And our core idea and did we realize that creative ambition? I'm a huge supporter of Arcane Austin. Their track record is awesome. I love a lot of a lot of the great games that they've built. This is one where the team didn't hit their own internal goals. Uh, I think it's I think it's maybe a bit simplistic to say, hey, maybe if you just laid it 3 months, the core creative of the game would have delivered on something more than what it was. So I look at them in different camps. If there's a production timeline issue, we've been open to delaying. If we just have more bugs than we should have at the end of the game, we're open to delaying. At some point, we do need to have a creative vision and put the game out, and reviewers and players will tell us what they think. In terms of our commitment to the game, absolutely. So he was talking about like this part. He was asked about like, um, like the idea of like, are you gonna like work on this game, fix it up, because what it is right now. And he says, in terms of commitment to the game, absolutely, the team at Arcane is taking the near term feedback. We're still working on the 60 frames per second update. We have a good timeline for that, and we're going to continue to work on the game. We've shown a commitment to games like Sea of Thieves, Grounded, to continue to go and build games. But I also know that these games are $70, and I'm going to take full responsibility for launching a game that needs to be great. We let all we let a lot of people down this week with the launch of this game, but we will continue to strive on. We will continue to strive on. You have to That's what creativity is about. So what I take away from all this, he talked about here. Let me see if I can find the quote again. Uh, Here it is. When a game needs to be delayed, like what we did with Starfield, Halo, and Redfall, because the production timeline is saying we have this creative vision and the production timeline doesn't get us to the completion of that vision, we delay games. But when I look at review scores of this game, and it's, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong part here. Um, I lost it. So, anyways, basically at one point he mentioned here about like, if it's not reaching the creative vision or there's bugs and stuff like that, they will delay. But when it comes to the part where they're just not hitting that vision, like um, maybe it's just that to me it just sounds like it's kind of they got to the point where like this game just isn't coming together. It's like do we like we've already delayed it a year. This game was supposed to come out last summer, so 9, 12 months this game's been delayed. It's still not coming together. Obviously, I'm taking a lot of what like just a couple paragraphs here, but from what I get out of this is that this game just was not coming together, and it was just a matter of like, do we delay this game? And this game was well in production before. Like, there are during the Activision um, Xbox proceedings going on, people from Bethesda mentioned they were working on a PS5 version of this game, and then they got bought by Xbox or Microsoft. So we know this game has been in production for at least what I think it was 2020 got bought, so say 2019, 2019, 2020 this game's been in production. So this game's been in production for a while. So maybe it was just like, okay, cool. If we delay another year, like, is it worth it at this point to pay tens of millions of dollars for another delay, or is it just a matter of like, this game isn't coming together. Let's just put it out, take the hit. Maybe they didn't think. Obviously, it sounds like they weren't expecting 62, but they probably like, okay, this game's gonna come out. It's just gonna be mediocre, but let's just put it out, fix it up so the bugs are gone, and then go from there. This is kind of what I'm getting. What about you, Gables?
All right, yes, and that I do kind of like share the same type of sentiments and stuff like that because in that interview, I remember that they were speaking on the regards. I think Phil Spencer was like speaking about in regards to like when you acquire studios or something like that. Sometimes you inherit the game project previously,
Yeah.
to where it's like, okay, we're gonna go forth. We're gonna help them finish up this last project before they start another project and stuff. From this initial things of what he's made it, of what he was describing and stuff, it kind of sounds like to me, kind of similar to what you were saying. They were trying just to cut their losses to where they were at. Hence the saying of, hey, even if they did like delay it for another 5 months to a year or something like that, it still wouldn't have improved it in certain qualities of it, which is incredibly shitty when you do think about it because it's like they knew the game at that point was in the state that it was at to where it definitely had a myriad of problems. There were a lot of complicated matters that they had to delve into. It could have resulted in regards to maybe mismanagement in a couple different aspects in
Mm-hmm.
Arcane. It could have been a bunch of different things that could have been set in motion to like schedules and like terms of like any type of like bug testing work that may not have been done, or it could have been just like creative choices and stuff that were clashing with one another between Microsoft and maybe Arcane. It's whatever it was, it contributed to such an extent to where Microsoft knew that this game was in the state that it was in and still decided to release it at a full $70 for
The
people that
first
were willing to
$70
go for
Xbox game.
it. This is their first $70 game. $70 first party game that they go forth and dish out, and it is at the state it is in. And they full on knew about that personally. So it's like when you think about it this way, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. It's like at that point and stuff, cut your losses, move on to the next project, do the typical PR thing where it's like, hey, we'll go through and get like a bunch of the stuff like patched, a bunch of things glitched. They're not going to go in depth and support this game, this live service style game for a couple of years because here's the thing about live service games. If it's not great at launch, it has an incredibly slim chance of surviving more than like a couple of years.
Hmm.
We've already learned that from this past year with multiple different live service games closing, and Redfall becomes yet another casualty in this type of mismanagement type of style where you have this game that was hyped up, that was in development since like 2019, 2020. Microsoft went through and inherited this mess while Arcane was going through and delving in a lot of the ideas, a lot of the creative stuff. And even when that whole hodgepodge of stuff just didn't really fit together the way that creatively they wanted to do it, they were left with no other choice. They've spent so much time and resources and stuff to where they were trying to recoup some form of costs from this.
Mm.
But I will agree, though, that this definitely was not the best choice that Microsoft picked for having to be their first premium, like $70 first party game. But you know what, though? It's like they had to go for it and start somewhere. And unfortunately, it looks like Redfall was that casualty that a lot of people were afraid of when this thing was first shown for game footage, especially with the IGN stuff like about a week ago, and how people were literally crapping on that guy's gameplay, and then later to come to find out that the controls were the major reason why he was
Yeah,
having such difficulties,
remember
which you
that. And
could
then
probably attest to.
yeah, and then I remember like he mentioned Phil Spencer mentioned himself where he was pretty upset when he found when they sent stuff to IGN to like post exclusively on their YouTube channel of the game running at 60 frames per second when they knew at that point in time the game was not going to work at 60, wasn't going to run on consoles at that PC it does, but on consoles it wasn't going to be at 60 frames per second. And then like they had the preview event in early April where they were playing on PCs at 60 frames per second. So a lot of misleading facts there, and maybe that wasn't like Phil directly. I'm sure like that's probably stuff he's
No,
not gonna like. I imagine like
no, Phil's
head
only
of
responsible for
Xbox.
certain
That's
PR stuff,
yeah.
but like it
Still,
had to have been people like
yeah,
directly under him that miscommunicated a lot of this shit.
yeah. And but I'm not trying to defend him here, but yeah, that's
No,
definitely something
I
there.
know,
But
I know.
um, yeah, the only thing I can think of like when they released this game, they probably maybe like to top up like there's a lot of layers between probably like where he is and the people like where like that game was at like a state to launch. There's probably a lot of game of telephone there, but once again, not trying to defend him. And he's definitely he's taking the blame for a lot of this.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of it actually. Um, maybe they didn't realize the game was like maybe they just thought the game was like done enough. Like the game wasn't gonna be great, but like they didn't realize all the bugs and all the technical issues were gonna be there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe they didn't realize that. So I was like, hey, put it out. It's gonna be mediocre. And then the game came out and they were not expecting, what it was. But like I said, they were. He probably saw the internal reviews and was like, oh, okay, we're looking at like a 75, 80 here. Like it's not what we want, but it's good enough. Maybe I don't know. But
uh,
yeah. So later in the interview here, Spencer was asked to reflect on the lessons learned for Xbox and what they could take from the launch date. Spencer said he believes the platform holders should have done more early in the. This is kind of what you mentioned already. Have done more early in the game's development in terms of providing assistance to Arcane and setting expectations for what a first-party game needs to deliver. When we acquire studios, there are games that are in development, and then there are games that are either really early in development or not even conceived yet. And we think we need to improve and engaging with games that are midway through production when they are become part of Xbox. Um, we've all seen like Hi-Fi Rush and Psychonauts 2
yep.
well into development when those games when they bought the studios. And Psychonauts 2 I believe is a Game of the Year nominee for the Game Awards, and
Yes.
Hi-Fi Rush
Excellent
is
game. Yes.
one of the best games of the year so far.
Absolutely.
So doesn't mean I mean they've shown in the past those games come out and they've already been those games were well in development on the way and they were still great. So maybe they just kind of were two hands off. I don't know, but anyways, I do think there's a different expectation for a game and a team when you've been third party and all of a sudden you become part of first party. There's a different expectation in terms of how you're going to perform on our console, and I think there's a different competitive set when people look at what this game is and say, hey, I want this game to feel as competitive as this other game on another console platform. And we didn't do a good job early on in engaging Arcane Austin to really help them understand what we meant to be part of Xbox and part of first party. And we used some of our internal resources to help them move along that journey even faster. We left them to work on the game. They're a very talented team. I love them. I love that team. I still do, and I will totally bet on them to do another great game. We should have been there for Harvey, who's the creative director for that game, and the team earlier. I think that's on us. And then through the process, it's Unreal Engine. It's an Unreal Engine game. We have a bunch of studios that have done some really great work on Unreal over the years, and I think we were too late to help in that when they had certain issues. So he did mention later on that they eventually had Coalition, who is
Mm-hmm.
the Gears people. They were basically a spinoff of the Epic Games studio that made the original Gears, and they had Rare come and help
Yep.
later on, be like support studios for Redfall. But they realized like beginning of this year they realized about the issues with the 30 frames a second when they should have been on that in last fall, but they realized too late about this being the case that it wasn't gonna be ready. Um, but yeah, I think it's a he makes really great points about the expectations of being first party because it's different when you are not only a console exclusive, but you are in like a when you turn that game on and you see Xbox Game Studios. There's a different expectations for that. Where like
Hmm.
if this game came out now and it was like a Bethesda was never bought by Xbox, and it was just Arcane Studios that worked for that was a Bethesda studio. This game would come out, it would probably just be a blurb that we mentioned um, in like the other news this week stuff, and
Yes.
there'd be a little bit of backlash. There'd be a little bit of people upset and shocked about the state of this game. Um, we would talk about for a week or we would have talked about it until the Breath of the Wild reviews came out, or
Yes.
the Tears of the Kingdom reviews, sorry, come out, and we'll never speak of this game again. But under Xbox,
It's
completely different.
magnified.
Yeah, it's magnified because only the last decade plus we talked about it a couple weeks ago with like the last 12 plus years of Xbox for first party games coming out has been not been great. Um, so there's that on top of it. So there's a lot more expectations on you, fair or not. There just are. Actually, just not. It's not fair to Bethesda. They didn't ask for the like well, Arcane, not fair to Arcane Austin. They didn't ask for this. That expectation, that pressure. Uh, but hey, they got it. And now this becomes now we're this. It's a whole thing. It's like the entire world, like the entire video game world, is talking about this game. I have like people like at work that I talk to that know I play a lot of video games, asking me like I had multiple people ask me about Redfall. It's like, oh hey, did
Huh?
you buy Redfall? I'm like, oh, I played on Game Pass and stuff. And it's like, man, I was watching the videos. I can't believe that. I'm like, yeah. I was telling them like I was really upset because like I was really looking forward to this game. It's like both of them said to me, I had never heard of this game until the reviews came out.
Hmm.
So it's like there's a lot of people like it. Like we sometimes we forget. It's like that's why I always talk about like when I like to go through those MPDs because like we get in our
Hmm.
bubbles, we get in those Twitter bubbles, those internet bubbles that we the YouTube like circle that we get into, where we don't realize like, man, there's a whole different world out there when it comes to video games that we don't understand, um,
Absolutely.
and that's part of it. And yeah, it's like this is a whole different L where like I was listening to the kind of funny X cast a few weeks ago, and Gary Widow was talking about we call ourselves the X cast when we should be calling ourselves the L cast because all we're doing is taking L's in the Xbox side of things, and it's like I mean that was before the Activision stuff happened last week. That was before
Yes.
this happened this week. So yeah, it's like it's just one more thing after another. Yeah. So I don't. I mean, Gables, kind of what was your thoughts on all this process?
Well, be quite honest with you, it's like it's kind of like a piggybacking of what I just previously had just said. It's like in terms of like an impression, in terms of the outsiders looking in and stuff, the casual person that's not really in depth inside of the gaming industry or a lot of the news that or pay attention to a lot of it, like say when we do, they're gonna look at that the first time, or like maybe hearing about Redfall and stuff. It's like, oh my god, this game is that bad or something like that. This is a live service game. There's all these issues and stuff. I don't want to play this on the Xbox or something like that. Or I'm not gonna. I don't even want to buy an Xbox. All these games or something like that they put out or blah blah blah. It's that first impression of a game when it first launches and stuff is the most important because that dictates to what the consumer will spend on that initial game at launch. And the lesser the score, obviously, the less likely someone's going to want to try your game, even on a service like Game Pass.
Mm,
But with it comes a couple of caveats too. It's like not only is it like people not wanting to delve and like wanting to play, but yet that same consumer base that's not inclined with like a little bit of the know-how in terms of what the Xbox games are going to be coming out or this or that, they're going to be less likely to spend on other stuff on your platform because if you're known as that game company or some that only puts out maybe a few games like first party games or something like that and you put out this, it's like the less likely they're going to want to spend on you and more on your competitor like a
yeah.
PlayStation or a Nintendo, or maybe they just want to just do something else entirely. You never know. But that initial look with Redfall, that was their chance to go and prove to people that, hey, you should be buying an Xbox or you should be invested inside Game Pass so you can play this game. And instead, it's turned into the exact opposite reactions of both what Arcane Austin and also what Microsoft had wanted, which is driving away people and just having this big old freaking backlash.
Yeah, it's something I talked about a few weeks ago when we talked about the 30 frames per second stuff, where
Hmm.
like we're at this point now with Xbox of like just a decade plus now of just not having a lot of games, and they do come out, they're
Hmm.
not up to the standard of what we expect. Like I love Gears more with Gears 4 and 5 than I love like I loved Gears games. I've loved all the mainline ones, even Judgment. And
Yes.
but 4 and 5 are my two favorites. But like Gears is just not Gears of what Gears were meant in the 2000s. Like
No.
it just doesn't. It isn't. Even though I love it more now than ever. Um, and it's like other than you can't like Forza. Yeah, it's great. Like like the Forza games are always come out and they're fantastic. But like that doesn't move the needle like um, like to like what doesn't move the needle of like a Halo, or kind of like it doesn't get like the you know the game awards. I mean, as little as it may matter to a lot of people, the grand scheme of things, but like it does
Yes.
matter. It does, but it does make a difference because like those games we talk about for years on end. Like
Hmm.
we talked about last year with the Game Awards. Like and there's never been a first party game to ever win a to ever win at the Game Awards ever. Even in the Spike TV era, never
That's
even
true.
won. I think there's only been one that's been I think Psychonauts 2 is the only one that ever been nominated. I'm not even sure if that's 100% correct. Um, which that game was well in development before they were bought by Xbox, because that was a not GoFundMe. What was the
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter? Thank you. It was a Kickstarter game way back when. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's yeah. Like I said this about Redfall. Like this game can't come out and be like I said a few weeks ago. Like we can't like Xbox is in a state where they can just put out this game and be a 75. And that's
Hmm.
when the 30 frames per second. I didn't think this would be the game breaking issue, but it was definitely a major concern. But it wasn't like the thing that was like gonna kill it for us. But like okay, like this scares me, but it doesn't like break it. And I thought this game was gonna be like okay, fuck, this game's gonna be 75, and then it's the 62 or whatever it is. Um, so yeah, yeah, it's rough. But let's move on to kind of a it's same kind of stuff here, but different part of the interview here. We talked about the future um, of kind of like Xbox. So kind of like this is like the biggest like honestly the part that like kind of blew my mind more than anything. Um, was
As well as many other people.
Yeah, so Spencer was asked if Xbox has taken its eye off the console market by focusing too much on PC. In response, Spencer said Microsoft would be wrong to think that just building great console titles could help it overtake Sony and Nintendo in terms of hardware sale. Instead, it's chosen to pursue different strategies. The Japanese companies, one focused on fulfilling developers' vision of enabling customers to play their games on any screen. So here's what he said: uh, we're not in the business of out consoling Sony or out consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know that will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter that when you're third in the place in the console marketplace and the top two players are as strong as they are and having a certain cases a very very discreet focus on doing deals and other things that kind of make being Xbox hard for us as a team, that's on us, not anybody else. He added, I see commentary that if you just built great games, everything will turn around. It's just not
Hmm.
true. That if we go off and build great games, then all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One, where everybody built their digital libraries of games. So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if you just focus more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs, and every new generation was a clean slate, and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today, there's no world where Starfield is 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s.
Mm,
That's not going to happen. Um, so yeah, this part kind of blew my mind because like it's great. So last
mm.
week I talked about like we talked about cloud gaming with the whole Activision being blocked by the CMA, and I said
Yes.
talk about cloud gaming because I was like, okay, I always thought I said Xbox is doing it the smartest because they already have that built-in library of all the ones that are doing it between like Google trying to do it on live, Ouya, stuff like that, or Amazon Luna. Like they already have this built-in library of people who are like, hey, these
Yes.
games you already own, now you can play on XCloud, or hey, if you have Game Pass, boom, here it is, you can play it on XCloud. And I was like, that's really smart. Like I mentioned, I have an iPhone, not because I am loyal, like I'm a loyal Apple guy. It's just like every time I buy a new iPhone, I just log into the new iPhone and
It's easier to do it that way.
has all my logins, has all my apps. They're in the same spot, has all my pictures, and it's like they kind of got me because they've got all my stuff, and it kind of blew my mind because like I mentioned this whole thing last week about XCloud and did not uh, kind of like tie that to the current console generation. And it's like such a great point where yeah, I agree. We're like like the idea of buying games digital, like it started in that PS3 360 era, but
Yes, it
like it
did.
really didn't blow up because like obviously hard drive space. Like remember the price of like I remember like I think it was like 120 gigabyte hard drive for the 360 was like $100 or something like that. Um,
Yes, it was fairly expensive back
yeah,
then.
and now it's like they come with a terabyte. You can get like another terabyte for like less than $100 now.
I know,
Uh,
right?
so you can talk about the you look at the PS4 and Xbox One era where like when we went into it like I went into that last generation, the PS4, Xbox One era, like pretty open minded. I had all three consoles, but I was like, I just like I always thought about I go where the games are, and obviously we all know what happened in 2013 with those press conferences. Everybody went to they bungled that one. That's not Phil Spencer's fault. He was there, but he wasn't. That was Don Matrick there.
Right.
He was and we know what happened there. And yeah, like so going in this generation, going into those press conferences in 2020, it's like this is PS5. All they gotta do is not fuck it up, and they didn't fuck it up. And I've mentioned this over and over and over again that we've never seen. And I'm not gonna include Nintendo in this because like really we on because they've always been kind of like they've always done something different. Like they're not part of like they've like after
Right.
GameCube they realized hey just trying to fight power with power isn't gonna work. We gotta do something different, and it's worked out. You know the Wii worked out big time for them. The Wii U not at all. Switch
Yep.
obviously worked out well for them. Um, but we have not seen ever in the history of really like gaming where someone took over without the other one fucking up a little bit. We look at PlayStation.
Right.
PlayStation 1 took over because Nintendo 64 wanted to stick the cartridges. So it
Yep.
pissed off a lot of the main Square Enix, stuff like that. So they went, boom, we're going to PlayStation. Same thing. PS2 just kind of carried on from that. And then 360 took off because not only you had Xbox Live, you had, so the online gaming was a big part of that, but also PS3 got cocky with their
Mm-hmm.
really difficult to work for console and $600. Hey, get a second job to play our games. And then you look at when the Xbox One, obviously the TV, sports, and if you want
Right.
to play games, they literally said this: if you want to play games, get an Xbox 360, which is crazy. So then you look at this generation, this last generation we'd had, like basically in the 2010 era, where like yeah, like a lot of people just digital gaming is now almost 50% of purchases out there now is digital gaming.
Yep.
It's getting bigger and bigger. And I think it might have actually be over half that now. It might almost
It
be
is over half.
yeah, it might be over half. But I don't know if that includes like games that you get full digital releases. That could include like like smaller indie games stuff like that too. But I'd love to see the breakout of that. Um, but yeah, like he's totally right, and like I actually really agree with like you look at like I agree with everything he says here because like obviously making great games like he's not saying it's not gonna like yeah make great games isn't gonna help. It will help. That definitely will help, no duh. But like it's not gonna flip it. It's what's gonna flip it is like PlayStation really fucking it up for them to like switch that because I'm not gonna count the Switch in this because Nintendo's gonna Nintendo and they're fine. Um, but between those two, between the blue and the green brands here, yeah, they're not gonna flip it with just all of a sudden unless they just come out with like 10 bangers every year or just something crazy like that before they can flip it. But Um, yeah, like I think I can understand where he's come from. I can understand the frustration of like gamers really like they look at like XCloud, Game Pass, and piece focusing on PC, or like you look at like oh maybe they've lost the focus, and they and I think Mike so like Mike mentioned like that in there of like, um, have you lost the focus on it? And he says no they haven't. And, I agree to a certain extent here because like, but he says like we're taking those games and we're not just making them on consoles. We're making it like we want you to we wanted to put it where everywhere else is at. And that's the thing is like sometimes the easiest thing to do, the hard part is like, trying to get people to come to you. The easy part though is like
Right.
instead of trying to make you come to us, what if we just go to you? And we talk about like Nintendo found their success by changing the whole strategy around. Like we're gonna find a different way to get gamers, and they on the Wii, and that worked out big time. The Switch obviously worked out big time. To them, it's like okay, we can't just. They said, and he said it himself, we can't just out console Sony. We can't just make you know their version of the games for us on our consoles. Like that's just not gonna like. Yeah, it'll help, but it's not gonna flip it. It's not gonna turn around. It's being on PC day one. It's being on XCloud. It's being you could play your games on your phone. You could stream your games wherever. Like that's the thing that's going to help. That's the main thing. That's getting a head start on that. That's the main thing. We've even seen now PlayStation like putting their games eventually on PC. So um, I don't know. In the fact he said that they're in third place,
Right.
those two things really blew my mind. But I mean, Gibbs, what was your kind of your thought process coming out of that?
Although I do agree with some portions of what Phil Spencer was saying in terms of statements, where it's like, yeah, this is definitely the generation or something like that at this point in time to where you're not really relying upon discs or like carts or something like that because everything is like getting towards entirely digital stuff. But at the same point, I thought the statement was kind of loaded in some instances because sure, maybe one or two great games or something like that isn't going to contribute to the overall complete like switching a fortune or something for what the Series S or the Series X or something like that that's currently going through. But there is to be said that if you had multiple different games that just not just resonated, and I'm not just talking about games that score like about 80s to their 90s or something like that, but even something similar to what Sony has been doing in terms of even things have been rating like in their mid to late 70s stuff, like a Stray or like a Cia, like Chia or something like that, to where it's like it's recognizable,
Sackboy.
right? You have, or yeah, even Sackboy to some extent, even though partially here and there and stuff. But having a consistent group of good games going through first party wise, on top of the fantastic stuff that was built upon that stuff, does contribute to people go through in purchasing your system and a complete reversal of fortune in some aspects. Now, granted, if this were like the opposite, if say Sony was in this sort of situation that Microsoft is in and vice versa and stuff, I mean, they would not be saying this obviously.
Mm.
But in this aspect of it, I don't believe Phil Spencer when he's saying that just focusing on making great games isn't going to turn the complete fortune. It can it can to some extent to where you go through and you put out some great games, right? And you get a lot of people to come back and go through and to buy a lot of this different content. What they're doing on top of with Game Pass and stuff like that. I mean, yes, that definitely does have a lot of momentum that can go and ease you into not just success for this current generation, but for whatever they decide to do next outside that stuff. However, a lot of the failures that they've done is to try to reestablish what has worked for them in the past. The Halo series to be one, the Gears series to where it's like stalled right at this moment in time, and it feels like some of these franchises peaked in the Xbox 360 generation, and they've been struggling to get back from that whole Xbox One generation in general.
Mm.
So even if there's like maybe a hand-picked amount of games or something like that, it feels like to me that from what Phil was initially saying in this interview, throughout this part of the interview and stuff, that they've kind of given up in terms of trying to compete full on with like these consoles because they know for a fact it's like it's not only just incredibly difficult just to go forth and get to that extent, but I feel like they've lost their way a lot of the different with a lot of the different things in order to make these consistent great games as these other publishers. Hence why they're going through their philosophy entirely different. Game Pass is great when it comes to the indie stuff, a lot of the different first party stuff, but I kind of feel like it's kind of defeatist in terms of what he's presenting it with. I mean, for God's sakes, I understand Phil Spencer is honest with a lot of what he's been saying at this point because, yes, a lot of this blame is on him too, as well as the entirety of the staff they got at Microsoft. But at the same point, it's like great games we know for a fact can sell consoles, especially first party consoles. Look at what you got going from the past and stuff. What made the Xbox 360 sell to a certain extent? It's because they had genre defining games. We're talking about Gears of War. We're talking about games that were emphasized of helping revitalized the entire genre with Halo Combat Evolved on console, which quickly went like Halo 2, Halo 3, the advent of online multiplayer stuff. Microsoft was key in making this stuff popular and making this the forefront that changed the entire industry forward to where when they went into the next generation afterwards, they got too overconfident. They released something that was half-assed in nature, and that's what led to their initial decline that they're still trying to struggle out of since 2013. And quite honestly, it's just them admitting their faults, right? And they got a lot of things to work with. But at the same point, it's like they wouldn't be in this situation if they did not go forth and structure things well in the past. Now it just kind of sounds like sort of a post-mortem in some aspects of, but
Um, I don't know. I agree with some of what you're saying. I think we were taking a little bit what he said, like a little bit out of context. Where like,
right,
I think what he's saying is not just having great games. Just having great games won't flip the war. Basically,
right,
I don't think he's not saying that. Oh yeah, like we're not focusing on making great games because that's not going to matter. I think he's saying
right,
we can have, like you said, we can have Starfield be 11 out of 10. That's not going to change things. What will
right,
change, maybe, because like I said, we've never seen the console wars flip, and I think the whole console war thing's stupid. Just like just go where the games are at, people. Just there's great games everywhere. Just go fucking play them.
hmm
But we've never seen the tides turn when the other one is successful. It's like I said, it's always
right,
I give all these examples of like the war is always flipped when the other one fucks up and the other one takes it and runs with the ball. Like they drop the ball, the other one picks it up and runs with it. That's where the war is flipped.
yes,
And then I said this over 40 years ago, Gables. I distinctly remember this saying this for 4 years ago at my old place I lived at. I could picture in my head. We have
yeah,
never seen it where all three are fucking killing at the same time. And I'm
that's
like, and I
true.
said it over 4 years ago. It's only a matter of time before it happens. And it was over 4 years ago I said that. And it's still true. We have not seen that. But like we have never. But if that does happen, and I believe it still will eventually happen. I do believe Xbox in the next. I won't be shocked in a year from now. We're looking at Redfall and we're kind of laughing at it. Like, man, imagine. Remember when they
Yeah,
fucked that up? Remember, like now, Starfield is a banger. Hellblade 2 is a banger. Whatever next is up is a banger. Um, but if say all three are just killing at the same time, that's not going to
right.
mean they're all of a sudden first place. If that's
No,
it,
of course not.
they need one of those two to fuck up. So that's what I mean. We're like talking about like, and like that's what Phil's saying is like they lost the most important war they can lose because there's people that are just like now they're just tied to PlayStation because the
Yep,
last decade now they've just been buying PlayStation. They have digital games on PlayStation, and now it's harder. Where like the Switch now is even like they've really focused on digital gaming as well, buying games digitally, especially with the voucher stuff. So you've got people entrenched in that as well. Obviously different, but still it's a factor. Um, but like just focusing on PlayStation versus Xbox here. Um, like I said, it's hard to like turn those average Joes that like most gamers aren't like us, Gables, that own
no,
both or all three consoles. Most only buy
one,
one and maybe have the Switch. We always talk about
possibly,
we always talk
yes.
about the what was it, the Wii 60 era where you can buy a Wii and a 360 for the price of the PS3. I think
Yep,
was the whole point where like most gamers that had two consoles had a Wii and a Wii and a 360, not a PS3. Um,
right.
so yeah, like I think I understand where he's coming from, and I can understand the strategy. And it's like there's I don't think it's a bad strategy of like let's with the cloud, with Game Pass, with PC. Like it's just
Well,
smart
yeah,
to be in
yeah,
more places at once. The idea of Xbox is to not, like I said, go to where gamers are, not bring you to them. And it's like I said, it's easier to do that. And like yeah, like the Xbox isn't just a console. This portion, it's this whole thing, and
It's a whole
it's
ecosystem
a whole
of
ecosystem. Thank you.
wherever you could play.
Yeah, um, yeah. So I don't know. Like I understand where it's coming from. Is it gonna work? I don't know. But yeah, I don't. I think people are like I've seen a lot of people like taking that kind of what he said and kind of blowing it up. And I
Well,
don't agree to
right,
that extent, but I understand like where they're coming from. But like I said, like he's not just saying we're not focusing on great games because it's not going to matter. He's saying just making great games isn't going to change it for us. And I think
right.
he's not wrong because as long as Spider-Man 2 is coming out, as long as Naughty Dog's putting out Naughty Dog style games, as long as Insomniac we're going to get Wolverine next year, um, we have all these other games like well, I guess we don't really know a lot what's coming from them, but I don't know. Like they have a lot of great studios over on the PlayStation side. They have a lot of great studios over that Nintendo side. I don't know when that train's going to stop rolling for them. So, um,
That's true.
and
I
like we've
mean,
seen like
yeah.
PlayStation's jacking up prices, and it's still the best selling console. They're outpacing the PS4. So, I mean, they look like they can kind of just do whatever they want, and
Unless
they're
they do a gigantic misstep.
yeah. And honestly, like you look at like they have like what they said they have over 10 games, licensed games in development right now. Maybe that's the misstep that Xbox needs for them to turn this thing around. That's the only like that's what I look at. Like if they focus too much in that direction and they kind of lose their way, that's what Xbox. That's the opening for Xbox, and I don't want that. I don't think most gamers want that.
No,
So, but I want
the
we want to.
gaming industry is at its most healthiest when you have all of the major companies, the three major companies, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, both producing excellent games at a pace that's not only comfortable but also is enticing to keep and sustain the initial consumer base that it has, but also brings in a lot of new players or a lot of people that maybe have lapsed or whichever and stuff, and they can still enjoy incredible content regardless of where they play it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think Gary would have mentioned at one point in the podcast where like, we've seen people like taking shots at Redfall, celebrating
Hmm.
its its failures, and I think it's stupid. But it's like when new IPs fail, that's bad for everybody, not just in the entertainment world as a whole. When and that's why you see so many like cookie cutter games that come out, and you see sequels.
Because they
Uh,
emulate the same thing or a
yep,
sequel of the same thing
yep,
that's been going over. So a failing new property is bad for the industry in general. It's because you're not going to get more creativity. You're just going to get the same
yeah,
every time,
yeah,
almost.
and he mentioned that where like he doesn't like people were saying like I'll just make Dishonored 3 instead, and it's like, and Phil said I'm pushing back on that because we've seen Tango Gameworks make Hi-Fi Rush, we've seen Rare make Sea of Thieves, like we've seen these studios like branch out and do different things. And I think sometimes we remember the failures more than we remember the successes, and that works vice versa as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, um, overall, I mean, what was your kind of like final thoughts, Gables, on all this? What was kind of how are you feeling on it?
Well, kind of not. Well, to be honest with you, my overall thoughts of the whole Phil Spencer interview and stuff, I can understand why that there were at some points where he felt like he was definitely grumpy. I mean, hell, dealing with all that stress and all that negativity and stuff over the past month. I mean, granted, that would put anybody in sort of a bad mood. But in regards to him being just open, being upfront with a lot of the major missteps that have occurred and him owning up to it, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, he's owning up to the stuff that he should be owning up to. That's like a common thing in terms of like a PR thing in general to admit, yeah, there were some missteps, there were some things here and stuff. But at the same time, when it comes to like just the overall thoughts that he had in terms of that's and like the whole not just the thoughts that he had but also in terms of like how he was explaining certain aspects of it like how the whole great games dealing and stuff that we just went through and talked about and stuff and like the whole things being different and stuff from past generations compared to this one and stuff. I thought it was eye opening to some extent because it's like, yes, we are definitely inside of a new age and stuff to where digital is starting to become more the norm and has been since their quote unquote worst generation to lose stuff. So it's like I felt the interview was honest to some extent. There were some stuff that I didn't agree with, obviously, but at the same point, it just leads to the point where it's like it led me to believe that Microsoft really needs to do a better job of managing their first party content because it feels like, in my honest opinion, that they are lost in a lot of their first party stuff that they have for future wise. It makes me, as a gamer, hesitant about some of their next releases for first party. For example, Starfield, for another one, Hellblade 2. That's not to say that these couldn't be fantastic games, but at the same time, when you have missteps like Redfall, that was touted as a major first party game, and it being mismanaged like it was, and had the issues that it did at launch, it makes not only myself, but many of the outsiders looking in thinking, why should I bother with Xbox if they don't have the first party quality games I want to play currently? What makes me want to play this over going to PlayStation and playing their library of first party games, or stick with Nintendo and play their first party games? But other than that, though, this is probably one of the most honest honest interviews that we're going to be having from someone that's not named Satoru Iwata.
Yeah, yeah,
Because as much as people are giving Phil Spencer shit and want him to be fired and all this other stuff, at the opposite end of the spectrum and stuff, we're looking at someone that's not only admitting, yeah, things went entirely wrong and we need and Xbox needs to do a better job in terms of managing that stuff. But at the same time, it's like there's a lot of courage to go into not just going up there, especially after major shit has happened. He could have just openly just canceled his entire interview thing and just gave a basic PR statement, and yeah, we would have griped even probably further in that regards to it. But he chose to still come on to the kind of funny games cast, explain a lot of the issues and missteps with the questions that Gary Whitta and then freaking Paris Lilly was asking him, especially Paris Lilly, because how
yeah,
eloquently he has the perspective of being not just a gamer in general though, but his insights in the Microsoft ecosystem for years, especially with him delving into the past previous generations alongside of one of his cohorts and stuff like that, Danny Pena and stuff from
yeah, from
Gamertag Radio.
yep,
All of these insights and stuff, it was definitely a fleshed out perspective from multiple different interview things. This is one of those rare interviews to where I felt fascinated watching it over and over again, even from different perspectives of people, like say Maximilian Dew to oh my gosh, Young. I think Young, yeah, also in terms of that stuff. It made me want to go forth and re-examine it to try to get a full perspective of things that I wanted to try to figure out. Why was these statements said? What was going on in terms of this planning? But the major thing, like I stated, that I've learned is Microsoft needs to do a better job managing the first parties.
yeah,
That's basically what I got out of it.
yeah. Um, I agree with you on a lot of that. I did have a quote here, yeah, I want to point out. Um, so you mentioned how Paris Lilly said last year during the showcase you had that 12-month plan. We saw all these games are showing off are coming
Yep.
out the next year. He said you didn't necessarily deliver on the games, and then
No,
Phil
it didn't.
cut him off right then and there, and said, "No, we didn't deliver. There's no necessarily we didn't deliver." And there's one other point where he talked where Paris Lilly said 2022 was a light year, and Phil interrupted and he said, "You call it a light year. I have other words I'd say for that." So he was very real on that. And yeah, like you said, obviously you always got to take everything with a grain of salt here. It's just PR marketing
Uh,
speak. You always take that. But yeah, I agree with you. Very real. One of the most real conversations we've ever gotten from a head of a company in the gaming world that I can remember.
Not named
So that's
Satoru
why part of
Iwata.
the thing. Yeah, except for Iwata, obviously with the Ask Iwatas, and then obviously I have the utmost respect for Iwata, for when he took the 50% pay cut, so they had to lay
Yeah.
people off because it's we make the decisions, we failed, we need to take the hit on this. Um, So yeah, like that's one of the things that he mentioned throughout the podcast was like, he saw the stuff about people saying hashtag fire to Phil, stuff like that. He's like, I get the frustrations, I understand that. He's like, he even mentioned like at one point where like he was very excited for the showcase next month, and like he's like, you guys have no reason to believe me at this point, and I totally get it. About like I'm really excited for the future and stuff like that. And it's like it definitely tells me like he listens, he understands, or he has smart people out there that work for him that listen,
Right.
understand, and report back to him, and he trusts because like he definitely seems like he gets it, and he's not in this weird like bubble up on the high floor somewhere that just doesn't
Right.
get it. We talk about like sometimes like we hear a lot of stories about how Nintendo just doesn't hear the complaints out there about stuff. We hear the same thing with like Jim Ryan, we get that, and like Ubisoft, EA, all in all corporations everywhere, but like just in our aura here of video games, like it definitely seems like he gets it more than the others do.
Right.
Um, like I said, it was nice seeing Phil on like this side where like I don't want to see anybody upset. It definitely sucked to like hear this interview and him like be on this podcast and do this interview for this reason. Because like usually we get the
Yeah.
more positive, happy-go-lucky Phil, and
Well, that's
like,
the
but it
thing.
was
I mean, let's look at it from this perspective, Tyler. It's like, let's just say you had to do something similar to Phil or something like at your job and stuff. You probably wouldn't be happy, or you
no,
wouldn't be rather like, you'd be rather probably frustrated or something like that too. In that
yeah,
retrospect, too.
he definitely handled a lot better, I think, than most of us would.
Right.
In this public, especially because like our jobs, we fuck up, five
We're
people know
gone.
about it. Yeah. Well, but like even if we fuck up, five people know about it ever.
Yes.
He fucks up millions of people. Like it's the Redfall is an Xbox the laughing stock of the video game internet right now. But and like I talk about the whole Fire Phil thing. It's like obviously a little bit of bias here because I love Uncle Phil here. There's a reason why we call him Uncle Phil, second best Uncle Phil in all of the world. Um, but like the whole Fire Phil thing. I don't agree with yet. I'm never gonna say like we need to fire this person. I'm never gonna go like push them to like have the lose their job. But um, he was handed a pretty shitty situation. I think he took over in like 2016,
Yeah.
2015, 2016. Obviously, the way Don Matrick had that company set up in that era, we know how bad it was. Like they were so focused on
TV, TV,
Connect,
TV.
TV, Sports, Connect, Xbox One
Yep.
being an all-in-one box, not a gaming box. Lionhead Studios being shut down, Fable being run into the ground, Halo
Mm-hmm.
having tons and tons of sequels. Um, like it's a video games is a much different world. We talk all the time. Like games now take 5-6 years to make. We're like, cool. Say we fire him now. We're talking 2030 before we like that person gets a chance to like have their vision shown off because now they're taking over games that are we're not like the games are in. He's just taking over games that were kind of like in the same place where Phil is right now, where he's taking over games that were like 2-3 years in development, and now they got to flip around. Like I said, you're right. Like you think you're right. Whereas like they need to do a better job of like, especially the studios they're buying. Where like
Mm-hmm.
the big thing you always hear about with like Phil and his team is like they're very hands off, which in theory is a great thing. But sometimes you need someone like I'm not saying like a firm hand in the sense of like you need that person to kind of like apply a little bit of pressure here to like we all work one of us work a lot better under pressure, and like maybe you wonder like a lot of these teams that they bought like worked under much smaller budgets than what they're used to, and like having
Yes.
more money that's great for them. They don't have to worry about the stress of like being out of jobs. The studio closes or like now they can do way more with what they were initially planning, but also maybe like this team like just throwing out a number here. Maybe they're used to making a game for $2 million. Now they got $100 million. It's like they don't know what the fuck to do now. Like, oh my god, what? So like maybe the sometimes you hear about like people like they do their best work under the most pressure, or like they gotta work around these certain criteria. And I don't know. You look at Hellblade was like a really amazing game that was like a 5 hour very small game, and now it's like I look at Hellblade 2. I'm super excited for that game. I love Hellblade 1.
Right.
Um, but like Hellblade 2 is like I don't know what the game's gonna be, and it's like the game looks fantastic, looks amazing, but it's like it looks like there's a lot more money into that thing than what the first game was. So
True.
maybe you like I don't know. But yeah, I am a sucker for a leader willing to go out and like fall on the sword a little bit. And it's like he took all the blame for everything. He went constantly went back and back and back about how it's his fault. And even when the interviewers in the interview try to turn it and like make it up, like try to turn it into something positive, talk about something positive, he's like, no, 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 no. We're going like he turned it back around. He's like, no, this is me. I fucked up. This is my bad. I'm taking the hit for this. So um, I will always appreciate that, because you very rarely see that, whether it's the big cheese at this giant Fortune 500 company, or
Right.
it's your direct at your job that has like 7 people on this team. It's a very rare sight to see. So there's a part of me that will always respect that in a way. Um, but Gables, we went really long on that. Um, but let's move on here. Some other news this week. Let me here it is. Sorry. Alrighty. So Gables,
Yes.
Zelda has leaked. It's
Yep.
online. Tears of the Kingdom has leaked. So keep an eye on that, people. Um, Definitely sucks. Sounds like the Switch was jailbroken like a year and a half ago, I guess, and
Hmm.
a lot of people got in that way. And it's like the mods are on PC. So just be wary when you go online. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit,
If you can,
where.
though, if you're like on sites like Twitter or something like that, make sure to go to mute terms and stuff, so that way
Mm-hmm.
you could try to avoid things. I mean, honestly, we're in an age here where like avoiding any type of spoilers is almost impossible. But at the same time, if you're using mobile like anyone else and stuff, then if you have to, do some extremes. If you don't think like meeting terms will go through, just delete certain social apps and stuff like that, and then like just not go and readily look for anything Legend of Zelda related right now.
Yeah. So yeah, just be careful. Like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 just came out Friday to
Hmm.
theaters, and it's gonna be very difficult because I'm not gonna be able to see it in theaters. But like, um, I've already seen people like posting stuff online. Like, luckily, knock on wood, here. I don't want to knock too loud because I don't want my dog to hear him go crazy. But um, like I'm trying very hard not to be spoiled for that thing, and I've already seen people posting about it. I've already seen like TikToks posted about jokes about the movie, and I'm like, scroll quickly. So yeah, I get it. But Zelda Treehouse will be on May 11th as well. They're gonna do some gameplay for that game the day before it comes out. So keep an eye out for that. So speaking of Xbox here again, they did announce a time on June 11th, which you already known. The Xbox showcase with the Starfield showcase directly apples to everything. So pretty
Oh my
cool looking
gosh.
game.
I'll tell you what though, it did look pretty fun. It did look pretty good though. Double Dragon
Yeah,
as a series has been hit and miss, but at the same time, it was really random during this past week. Just waking up and all of a sudden turning on the PS5, checking out the YouTube app, and all of a sudden it's like a new Double Dragon. What? What's
yeah,
this? Like,
right.
so we're in an age now where the beat 'em up has not only made a big resurgence and stuff, but now it's getting to the point where now other people are bringing back classic beat 'em ups in order to try to get some piece of that pie. And yeah, Double Dragon definitely fits that mold.
Yeah, so that's awesome to see that's coming back. The downside though, they said that the online multiplayer portion won't come out till later though. Um,
Oh,
right.
such a
But
missed opportunity. Come on.
yeah, I feel like you should just might as well just wait till the game till it's ready to put the game out. But Gables, I have to pee, so I'm gonna
Okay.
let you talk about what you've been playing this week. Okay, buddy?
Alrighty.
All right.
Okay, everyone. So, in terms of gaming this week, other than like getting my Switch OLED and stuff like that, I decided that I wanted to play and delve into Advance Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp. I am on mission 9 for Advance Wars 1. And let me tell you something, getting to that point, it had me to try to relearn a lot of the different aspects of Advance Wars. First off, trying to realize it's a strategy game and not a turn-based RPG and stuff, kind of like what I'm used to with, say, Fire Emblem. Meaning, it doesn't matter if, like, say, I go and use certain units and stuff and they end up, like, dying or something like that. I mean, I can always go through and just, like, spend the necessary funds and stuff to, like, say, spawn another, like, infantryman or spawn another tank if I have to, you know. But in the grand scheme of things, though, I am liking Advance Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp. The game looks it looks fantastic. I mean, having a chance to play it on the OLED screen over the past couple of nights and stuff, just delving into maybe a mission or two here or there, or trying one mission over and over again. I mean, I'm loving the presentation of it. I'm loving how ease of use has gotten even better in regards to this game, to where things are readily explained in good detail. There is a casual mode in case, like, say you want, if you're like, say you're still brand new to strategy games, you don't want to play, like, say on the normal mode or something, you can switch it down to casual. It won't be as intense, but there's still going to be some challenge involved with it. I mean, we're pretty much talking about a game of like game of war chess, pretty much. But through my initial experience, I went through the tutorial. I've had a chance to play with two COs so far, which is Andy and Max. Andy is the dude that has this hyper repair ability, to where it, if he gets his meter all built up and stuff, if you do a lot of things right, you get to use his ability and stuff, and it fixes like a lot of his units and stuff. So that way, instead of like having, say, five five durability or something, like say on your tank, and if he uses that hyper thing, it'll probably pump it up to like around, about I want to say about 7 8 or something like that. So it can be significant in certain moments. I've used that a couple different times in a couple of missions so far, to where there was this one mission I was against this one CO by the name of Grit, who's a part of the Blue Moon faction at this moment in time in the story, to where he's more Grit is more of like a CO that's like more of indirect combat sort of unit, like indirect combat sort of CO and stuff. So where I used Andy's ability was basically whenever I would get in like a certain situation stuff, to where I box in a whole bunch of his different units and stuff. Say, what was it? Yeah, say for like, say one of the maps, one of the missions where it involves fog, the fog of war stuff. Yeah, I basically saved his ability up until I got a good cluster of them, then used that in order to try to steamroll about two or three of his units and stuff and just destroy them outright. From the enemy COs at this point in time, I mean, you have Olaf, which is basically the dude that has his Blizzard ability, which freezes the whole entire battlefield, right? But also it makes movement with certain units less, unless you have like a main road with certain vehicles. But I have had issues with like that ability in terms of trying to get a good feel like movement, so to try to box in some of his like units or some of his vehicles. Like, say for example, try to get in close, say like on a missile, like a missile or rocket launcher type of like vehicles, so I can do like direct attacks on them to try to like destroy them faster. But I thought Grits was actually pretty devastating in certain aspects, because I think it was like mission 8 or something. I had to face off against him. I could choose between either Max or Andy. I chose Andy because if I would have chose Max, he's more of a close combat sort of CO, to where he'll pump up the power and stuff. Whereas some of his close combat units, he'll just go through and try to destroy like certain like enemy units or something hyper quick for that turn. But the thing about Grid is he has an ability to where he'll emphasize, it would actually more and expand the field of vision of long distance indirect vehicles, right? And so if you're in range, then if you get hit by that, it could be potentially devastating. For example, he had this one unit that was like I want to say a rockets unit that was hidden like in this little, it looked like a little chunk of like an island or something like that, right? And so here I got some of my like tanks or something like that going across, and all of a sudden I see him use his ability, him literally take down one of my tanks and stuff like that to half of initial thing in like the one turn. And I'm like, okay, where the hell did that come from? Or what spot on the map there? It's covered by a fog of war. I had to use my recon unit in order to try to go for the clear away of the map. I'm loving the element of strategy and the element of challenge so far. I'm still trying to get used to capturing certain points, because I'm now in mission 9 right now, to where a bunch of what I need to do is trying to not only simultaneously get about 12 outposts and stuff like that claimed, but I also have to try to keep the enemy like NPs, like the enemy commander and stuff like that, going through and getting all that stuff. I've tried it now twice. Gonna be delving into it, I'll be delving back into it fairly soon. But my overall impression has been positive. I really loved how Nintendo have like pretty much remade Advance Wars here from the ground up and still retained a lot of like its original appeal and also its original things. I want I have like a goal where I want to try to finish the original Advance Wars for the first time and stuff before I go and play Tears of the Kingdom, because it's going to be one of those things where if I don't
Mm-hmm.
finish this game, I'm not going to go back to it. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing for this past week.
All right. So I like I mentioned at the top, I've been playing some Redfall. I played like 3 hours of it. It's everything you heard. I haven't had too many bug issues. I've had some like frame rate issues, but like bugs not so much. AI is completely terrible.
Have you done the
Um,
aspects to where you've gone around vehicles and stuff and just let the vampires or something like that just try to just get froze or something like that and don't advance further in your
oh,
position?
I've heard of that. I have not seen that. No. I've had a lot of the dumb AI where like you kill the guy and like 5 feet from the AI and he doesn't even recognize the fact I killed the guy 5 feet from him. Had a lot of that. The game it looks like it was made in 2015. Um, yeah, it's the gameplay is not fun. Um, the power ups for your individual characters are borderline useless. Um, yeah, the game is just not good. It's just a bad game, which sucks. It's just a bad game. Um, yeah, like I said, I was super excited for that game. I wouldn't like thinking it was like 10 out of 10, but I was going in with like, all right, this could be a fun, 20-hour, 8 out of 10 game, and that's kind of what I was hoping for. And yeah, it is what it is. But the game was the one game I played a shit ton of.
Yeah.
Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Yeah.
I ended up finishing that game.
Good.
It took me probably like, I don't know, somewhere between like 25, 30 hours, but I did a bunch of side shit. And this is everything I was hoping Fallen Order would be. Uh, it is one of the best games of the year. It might be the game of the year. Um, Absolutely adore this game. Like I tell a lot about Fallen Order. Like I even replayed it last month. I've played initially at launch, and I'm like, this game still feels floaty. Feels like a 8 out of 10 maybe, at best 7.5, 8 out of 10 kind of in that area. And they, like I said last week, I only played like the initial area, where like you could just feel the budget and the time they had. Like they built upon that first game so much, where they had like the 5 stances. The graphically, it's a lot better. The combat feels way better. Traversing around the world is much better. I love the fact where it's like they just take everything you learned in the first game, Fallen Order. You just start with in this game, like the
Good.
double jump, the wall dash, things like that. Like your force abilities that you learn, you just start with those, and
Hmm.
because a lot of problems like you learn a lot of that shit in the first game, but you learn it as you go, and some of the best stuff like the double jump you learn like 80% through the game, and it's like that's one of like the best parts of the traversing of the game, and also the wall running, and so just starting off with that makes the game feel like a lot much better. Getting around, you move a lot faster. Getting around the world is just so much better. Doesn't feel like such a slog. Um, like I said, the combat is much better because like in the first game, like when I replayed it just a month ago, I was like, I just didn't. I actively ran past people. I'm just trying to mainline this thing. I don't want to fight anybody. It's not fun to fight. But I thought that story was fantastic. The story is much better in this game. I love Cal Kestis. I love Marin. I love Seer, Greasy Money, my boy. I really loved kind of what they did with all that and some of the new characters they added, like Bode and a few other ones as well. And like it felt very Mass Effect 2-ish to me, where
Huh.
like the game is about getting the like because like, you start off the game with like you're not with your crew anymore, you're doing your own thing, and
Right.
then like part of the game is like getting the crew back together, but also adding new members. And then you have like Grease owns like a bar, a saloon on one of the planets you go to, and like as you progress, you add more. You're introduced to new characters. You do side missions for them, and then they come. They basically go to your saloon, and like
Oh.
they give you like side missions, or like you can talk to them and learn a lot of like backstories, like stuff like that. And like that's kind of the Mass Effect 2 part of it to me, where it's like you're just like you're building you have you're getting your old crew back together, but you also like you're adding all these new people, and you can every time you go back to the like that area, you can go talk to them and you can like learn new things about them, about like the world you're in, or like they give you new missions to do and stuff like that. And I really love that. And like you initially have to do like a mission for them to even join your crew, which is great too. So yeah, I really liked all that. I don't want to talk about too much about the story because it's fantastic and I won't spoil anything, but it's uh, amazing story. I thought, and I am excited if we get a third game. I'm really excited where they go with it because like there's a lot of places they do a good job. Like much like the first game, I thought they did a good job of like wrapping it up in case I didn't get a sequel, but
Right.
also like leaving enough there to like they can build upon to a sequel if they were able to make one. And I think they do the same thing there with this game. But like I said, like in the first game, I actively just avoided combat. In this game, like I was going on my way to like fight people, and like they have like I mentioned, like they have like you go meditate, which is like the bonfires of the Dark Souls thing. So every time you meditate, if you rest and reset all of your health
Right.
potions and stuff like that, it like resets all the enemies that you've killed, and they come back. I'm like, all right, I'll go fight them again. Like the mini bosses you can find throughout the world are amazing. Like one of the characters you get introduced to, like she like gives you like stuff to, like tells you like where those bounty hunters hunting you. She tells you where they are, so you can go fight them. And like those fights are fucking awesome. The boss fights and the main boss fights in this game are fucking cool as hell. Um, the side missions are fun. Like doing like they have some cool like little temples you can go into and like you can solve puzzles in. Kind of felt like almost like shrines in a way, or like some of the assassin reminds me of like Assassin's Creed 2, where like you can go and like go to like some assassins like temples in that game and like solve some puzzles and do some like platforming
Right.
to like solve and learn about the past of some of these things. And I really like that. That's like the lore and the backstories you learn. Like, yeah, I absolutely enjoyed this game. I could not put it down. I like I said, it was so easy for me to like on one hand like I wanted to keep I love the story so much and the characters. I wanted to keep like going through this game, but like it was so easy for me to like every time I get like close to something, I'm like I'm gonna talk to that guy. Oh, he gave me like he tells you like he gives you a side mission. I'm like fuck yeah, I'm gonna go like figure out what's going on with these Jawas over here, or oh there's a bounty hunter
Oh.
here that wants to kill me. I'm gonna go fight this fucker, or so Jedi temple stuff like that. Like I constantly was like, anytime I talk to somebody, they give me a side mission, I was gonna go do it. Like I could not help myself. The new planets you go on to, like there's not a lot of them. I think it's like four, which I think the first game had four, and really only like one of I thought one of the world planets in the first game was actually really cool. The rest are like meh. In this game, I thought all of them were really cool. A couple of them are smaller, but like there's like two main ones they focus on that like feel big initially, but then like as you like gain new abilities and stuff like that, like you unlock new areas and they're fucking huge.
Mm.
Um, and like all the areas are way bigger, and there's just much more shit to do in them. But not like overwhelming to the extent of like it's a map game like Assassin's Creed or something like that. But like um, yeah, like I feel like what you do in that game, like the side missions you do, stuff like that, like the little things you can search for, knickknacks, stuff you can get, like really do like nothing feels wasted. And I was like, there's so much fun to play this game that like I didn't like I wanted to keep doing them. Like I didn't have any issues doing them. So yeah, to me like it's gonna be hard for this game not to be like in my game of the, like that top three portion of my game of the year. Like I don't know.
Right.
Um, like there's a couple games in my mind that are like competing with it still in my head, but like I don't know. It's gonna take hell of a lot for like something to knock it out of that area. So yeah, yeah, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I know there like I've ran some small technical issues. Like I've heard some. It's definitely one of those cases where like it's kind of like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where like you play through that entire game and you had like barely any issues, and I played through that game and I had all kinds of issues. I talked to
Right.
people and I've read about people like on consoles at least that have had like a ton of issues. Like I had one crash that was annoying. Um, I had a couple weird issues where um, like BD1, your little robot friend that's with you, like instead of like sitting on your back like he always does, like he was just like hovering above me instead. And then like I ended up like I think I just jumped in the water and I got out and they fixed it for me. Um, and I've had some like frame rate issues here and there, but it was weird as the frame rate issues were always during cutscenes.
Yeah.
And they weren't like drastic, like they weren't like all throughout. They were like certain scenes where like there's fast paced stuff happening, but like in gameplay there wasn't really a lot. I played it all on quality, I believe. Is quality the one where it runs at 60? There's
No
a
performance.
performance. performance is yeah. I played at performance, so 60 frames a second, and there's some frame rates here and there, but it wasn't like egregious anyway. So yeah, like if if you're a Star Wars fan at all, like I am someone that is like been all over the place with Star Wars the last 20 years of my life, especially the last like 5-6 years where post Rise of Skywalker I've been so off of Star Wars, and this was like the first thing that's come from really since Last Jedi that I've like I like truly adore from Star Wars. So yeah, big time recommend for me to check this game out. It's one of the even if you're not a Star Wars fan, it's just a great fucking game. So just play it. Um, I was telling a friend of ours, Josh Yoshifet, that he was asking me about it because he's a huge Star Wars fan. Obviously, his online name is Yoshifet, but
Right.
he was asking because he did not like Fallen Order, and I was like, dude, just watch like just watch like a 20-minute video on YouTube about Fallen Order, the story because it's fantastic, and just play this game, and I think I might talk him into it. So,
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. So, anyways, fantastic game, one of the best games of the year. Um, Jedi Fallen, Jedi Survivor. Sorry, it's gonna be tough for me not to fuck that up. But yeah, that's all I've been playing. I think that's it for this week as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the show, please like, follow, subscribe. Follow us everywhere: Twitch, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Check out Extra Life as well. All the links are down below in the description. Like I said, or tell your friends. Most importantly, share. Tell your friends. We really would appreciate it. The more you guys do stuff like that, the more it helps us out. So yeah. But I was your host. I was Tyler.
And I've been Colonel Gables. So until next time, everyone, play some fun games. But thank you again for listening to another fun-filled episode of the Drunk-Nerds Podcast.
And hey, Gibbles.
Yeah.
Too sweet.
Too sweet, man.
Bye, guys.
See ya.